Hey everyone, welcome to the Aeon 14 podcast. My name is James S. Aaron, and I'm joined by the Aeon 14 team, including our illustrious leader, Michael Cooper. We're going to be talking about all things Aeon 14, from the books, the science behind the series, the ideas, the cool stuff, the kick-ass stuff, and whatever else you, the readers, would like to hear about. So let us know. On board today, we've got our editor, Jen McDonald, our narrator, Allison Stinnett, the authors, Jenny Green and Lisa Richmond. Did you guys hear my dog barking?
Mhm.
Damn it. Okay, I'll start over again. Sorry.
It was just when you said Alison, so it's like Alison went. "Ooh."
Yeah.
They were just.
I'm not cutting this. I'm leaving this in.
That's fine. That's our model.
That was loud. Those were my people. They were cheering.
Yeah, there you go.
He sits outside and watches the front window, and if he sees anything, he just goes nuts. That's our corgi. Corgis are
Love
yeah,
Battle
okay.
corgi.
Battle corgi. He is not aware of his size. So as you can see in the hopefully we're in gallery view this time. We've got Jen is with us, Allison, Jenny, and Lisa, and me. I'm still here. And today we're talking about Lisa and Michael's new book, Proxima Centauri, now second in the Enfield Genesis series, which tells the ongoing stories of Terrence and Jason Andrews. We're also going to talk about antagonists, the bad people in Aeon 14, and what goes into making an excellent baddie. But before we do all that, let's talk about some updates from Michael.
You bet. So today, if you're seeing this on Sunday, if I get up to date, both Alpha Centauri and Proxima Centauri are on for 99 cents. Alpha Centauri is on sale everywhere, and Proxima is just in the US and UK.
Proteus Bridge is 99 cents too, right? Or how long is it going to be now?
No, Proteus Bridge is back to regular price.
It is, okay.
We'll refocus. But it was actually on sale everywhere because I screwed up the promotion and didn't get it booked in time. Actually, this is something just people might not want to be interested about, is that Amazon only lets authors schedule sales for the US and the UK. And so if we want to do a sale globally, we have to sort of do it a couple days in advance and pray Amazon sets the price on time, which they oftentimes don't, which is why Proteus Bridge took about 10 hours longer than I hoped it would to go on sale because I forgot to schedule the sale because I had to schedule it a couple days in advance. And I screwed up. But if you live outside the US and the UK and you would love to get, you would love to get sales like these, I recommend complaining to Amazon and saying, why can't authors offer scheduled sales in my region? That's the only way they're ever going to change it. They're not going to change it if I ask. So it's just my little 2 bits there for you guys. So Alpha Centauri is on sale everywhere. Proxima Centauri is on sale in the US and UK. It'll be on sale everywhere next month because Amazon also restricts how often we can do price changes after we do certain types of sales. This coming Thursday, probably in 4 to 5 days when you see this, Precipice of Darkness is coming out, which used to be called Fallen Empire, but no empires fell in the making of this book, so it ended up becoming called something else. Jen wanted me to put no empires were harmed, but empires were harmed. Just no empires fell. And that was because a number of the things in the story just got a lot bigger, which I think you as the reader are going to enjoy. Where we got the Sarahs now. There are 3 Sarahs. That wasn't super clear, I don't think, in War on a Thousand Fronts because not everybody knows where Valkyris is. Unless you've read the Hans Agents book, you don't really know there's this whole other other sidebars of the war going on in Valkyris. So that will eventually tie in a lot more. But for now, there are 3 Sarahs, except for the new Sarah that Aerith also made. Well, technically, there's 4 Sarahs. And who knows if Aerith hasn't made more Sarahs? In fact, Sarah at this point is wondering, is she even the original Sarah? Or were there previous Sarahs that her mother made and didn't like and nuked as well? There's a lot of identity, like who the hell am I? What the hell is going on? And then a whole lot of who cares? Let's just go kick some ass. Darkness. We also finally get to meet one of the core AIs. And you start to understand what they're all about. Them following that, and this is the book I'm wrapping up today after we have this chat, is going to be Tanis Richards' Operative, which is basically, this Tanis Richards book has somehow turned into like a combination of Jane Bond, I'm saying Jane Bond on purpose, it's not a typo, a verbal typo, and like a little bit of Austin Powers thrown in there as well. Because Darla is just way too much of a character for Tanis to fully withstand on her own. So Darla gets her way. a little bit, which is a riot, much to Tannis's dismay. Lisa helped me with some of that too. So Tannis, if you encounter Tannis doing something ridiculously absurd, it's probably Lisa's fault. She tries to pretend like it wasn't her fault, but the idea was all hers. I'm just gonna say roller
I cannot.
are the words that Lisa said, as in hot couture.
I cannot confirm or deny that.
Yeah. And then following that, 1 week after Tannis Richards' Operative comes out, we'll have Tannis Richards' Blackest Night coming out as well. That'll be out September 6th. And then 1 week after that, Critical Inertia comes out, which is the 5th book in the Kylie Rhodes books. And then what I'm going to do for the Tannis prequel trilogy is that Shore Leave comes out Galactic Genesis on the 18th or 19th. I'm actually going to run a sale for all 3 books later in September, so they're not going to get sales right after they come out. They're going to wait a little bit for a big sale at the end of September for all 3 books at once. I feel like I'm missing something, but am I missing anything that's coming out recently? Any of your books I'm missing? No one? Okay. Well, I guess Best of Burning is coming out before too long as well. So there's that.
Oh yeah, but that's like end of October, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
And then this puppy right now is currently $29.99, but it'll be $19.99 starting September 1st, and that's because the publisher that this is done with doesn't let you change prices more than once a month. They're even more. They make Amazon look like your best friend that's willing to do everything for you. But yeah, so this is the book with covers. This has the covers for Intrepid Saga, Orion War up till now, although it has the old Fallen Empire cover, so I'll make this a little bit of a collector's edition maybe. And then it's got Perilous Alliance and the Perseus Gate book. So it's actually got like it's got a little homage to the Sunny Skies is there behind Tannis too, so you get a little bit of both worlds. It's got like the original covers for the books that had cover changes, and then the most recent covers show like what the full wraps look like for the various covers. You can see all of that. You can see like the very, very original versions of some of these covers I did myself way back in the day that never actually made it onto books. And then there's some cool stuff like, if I can find it here, some stuff from the photo shoots, just some shots from the different photo shoots. So you can see how everything came about. And then there's also a piece of art in this book that does not exist anywhere else and will only ever be in this book. And that's a scene from the upcoming Earthen Ascendancy book, where you can see there are 3 Sarahs, Tannis, and Jessica all together. And also, I guess if you're a patron, you can get this as well. And then right here, you might notice a BLT, because they were all taking a break. The fights are up. Actually, there's a BLT behind Tannis too. So both Sarah and Jessica got some BLTs going on there. Yeah, so this is the paperback version. It'll be $19.99 September 1st, and the hardback version will be $29.99. That's going to be coming out sometime in September. I'm just waiting for them to send me a proof on that one. I've been waiting for like 2 weeks for them to send me a proof copy.
So I have a whole wish list of Amazon art books because I love them, and even $30 for a hardback is a great price. I'm really stoked that the publisher could do that.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
Because they're not usually that cheap.
No, especially it's 84 pages of full color.
Yeah.
And let's be that price. I'm also going to get them up on Etsy too, signed copies on Etsy. So I actually suspect most of them might just want to buy them there, obviously. And then if everybody goes and buys Andrew Dobell's books and gets him enough money to get a ticket to Vegas. He released a book today, so I'm plugging his book a little bit. His first book in his Star Magi series came out, actually not today, this past Thursday. So if he makes it to Vegas, I can't speak for him or not, but I'm going to get him maybe to sign some copies while he's there too, so folks might be able to get some copies that have the artist actually signing the book, which I think would be pretty freaking cool. There's also, if anybody doesn't know this, Andrew and I are writing a crossover where Amanda from his urban fantasy series actually shows up in Aeon 14. And you would have met Amanda in Bob's Bar. Thank you. Yeah, the Bob's Bar books. She was there. And both Amanda and Tannis both remember the fact that they had a trans-universal visit. And so Amanda's actually going to show up in Aeon 14, but she's not going to meet Tannis. She's going to meet Sabrina and the crew of that ship. So that's where Tannis is going to be. But she's also going to hang out with that's where Amanda's going to be. But she's actually also going to meet Tannis later on. So there's actually stuff in this book that covers things that haven't been written yet. So I apologize for that. Yeah. So there's actually Tannis is actually going to be talking. Yeah, Tana's been talking about a ship she got from Amanda, which no one will know about yet. So, forgive me when that happens. But eventually, when all the books get written, it'll all work. I swear.
There's a plan. I swear there's a
There
plan.
is. I swear there's a plan. Totally a plan. My other monitor shut off and it's like flashing over here. Just give me a second. Yeah, so I think that's it. I don't think I have anything else. Oh, right. The actual CD. So you can get this CD of the OutSystem soundtrack is also another option you can get. It's available on Etsy. It's also available on Amazon, but it's kind of hard to find. You have to like search for like OutSystem album CD, and there's no cover art showing on Amazon, so it might confuse you at first. So you can get like one of these old weird discs, that are round and contain music on them.
Weird.
Well, I think the art book and the CD are both pretty. Because in the world of ebooks, did we just use Michael? Did we lose his voice?
No, I'm here. My other computer is making noises.
That's one of the things that folks are always talking about is the fact that with the ebook, they don't even see the cover sometimes. Like you get the book and it just jumps right to the first chapter. Mm-hmm. And this is an awesome, look at and check out this awesome art. So I'm stoked about it.
Cool. Huzzah!
All right. What's that?
I said huzzah.
Huzzah!
Yes. I'm like the only person in the world that actually says huzzah normal. Actually, I'm probably not. There's probably a bunch of other nerdy people like me.
I say.
You could make it a thing.
Allison and I are simpatico.
Me and my sisters.
I also say huzzah.
Oh, okay. Half of us say huzzah.
You're not as excited as you think you are.
Look at James, Jenny, and Lisa are looking at us like we're crazy. They're like, "You what? You say huzzah? You are crazy people."
I had to program myself not to say hua, so huzzah is too close. It's the gateway word.
You can say, why is it hua?
What?
Why not say hua?
Hua, I'm going to say it. Well, hua is everything but no. So, like, hua could be, F off. Hua could be, that's a stupid. Hua could be, I hate you. There's all kinds of reasons not to say hua.
I got you. Okay. Huzzah does have a much narrower scope. So,
yep. Hua, sir. Hua.
That is celebratory.
Right.
Maybe sarcastic, but definitely.
I saw conversations in the Army that were just nothing but hua, 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 hua.
It's kind of like I am Groot.
Hua. Pretty much.
Yeah, it's a version of I am Groot. I like that.
I know. Pretty much. And they're like, what are we doing? I don't know.
So what do we decide?
So today we're talking about Lisa and Michael's new book, Proxima Centauri, which I'm pretty stoked about.
Cool.
No, don't say that. Say yes.
I am Groot.
I am Groot.
I think that's my word, Groot.
So it's a little bit different than Alpha Centauri. And Lisa, do you want to talk about how you approached because is it fair to say that it's definitely I think it's an action book, but I keep hearing maybe psychological thriller, or I think, and it kind of gets into our antagonist conversation, but this book does really give you to know baddie in the book. And is that something that kind of came with the writing, or is it something that you had grew out of the last book and you wanted to spend more time exploring? Because I think the cartel in Alpha Centauri is I hate those guys, I want to kill them. But that was a feeling I came out of Alpha Centauri really kind of wanting to know more about the cartels and the bad guys. Were you thinking that, or is it something that just grew with the writing?
Prime kind of came into his own. I love thrillers, and I really wanted to pursue kind of the sci-fi thriller, which I don't think you see a whole lot of, and I know it's not for everyone, but it's and it's an action adventure. I call it a science fiction thriller with a lot of action in it. As far as how Prime developed, he kind of I wanted to play with the concept of what would happen if you were to change someone fundamentally. I had seen a TED talk about a woman who had a brain tumor. She was a chemist, and she had a brain tumor, and she had when they excised the tumor, they took out a part of something that in the brain that created a chemical that you cannot live without. And so she had to take supplements to keep her brain chemistry normal. And being a chemist herself, she decided to play around with that. And she tells a story about how she changed herself to a 25-year-old male as far as chemical composition of the brain went and how it impacted her for a couple of months. She said she became very confident and a little cocky and thought she could do anything. That was her talking. I didn't say that. But I mean, just the whole TED talk about how altering brain chemistry can change a personality intrigued me. And I wanted to play around with that. And as I started to play around with that, suddenly this guy just became this sociopath. And it kind of sprung from that, actually. And not so much good versus bad, although he became very, very bad. And then he became bigger than almost bigger than, just as big as any of the other characters. And so it was kind of hard to decide. I got to the point where I thought, oh gosh, I'm spending so much time with Prime. I need to get back to my main. This is a story about Jason, not about Prime. And it was a real struggle for me to. Did you say something, Jen?
Nope.
Okay. It was just a real struggle for me to balance that. I really worked to figure out how I could stop the Prime scenes and get back to what was going on with the team.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, Lisa just likes writing sociopaths.
He was fun to write. He was really kind of. I kept thinking I was going to jump the shark. In fact, I thought I jumped the shark several times, and I kept.
It can be cathartic to write really bad guys who just don't care.
Yeah.
And just revel in their badness. Not that like we need to get it out, but it's just kind of like you spend so much of your time thinking about the good in people and what good people are trying to do. Every now and then you're like, what's the other side like?
What if all of the limitations were taken away, and someone?
Well, I don't want to lose Proxima Centauri completely, so we should get to that.
Sorry.
We're going to table that question because it's a good one, or a good observation, I guess. But what has been most exciting about this book? Or it sounds like Prime really pushed you through the book, but is there something else that you were really excited about in writing it, or even in working with Michael on it?
Oh, just the whole process is tons of tons of fun.
Mm-hmm.
It became a lot longer than I had planned, and being able to take some of the characters that were really not very well developed in Alpha Centauri and develop them, the twins, Landon and Logan, and kind of I kind of started to fall in love with them, and so I wanted the reader to do the same.
You got that.
Oh, good.
That, yeah.
So Landon and Logan and Daryl, Daniel and Aaron, too, were two others that, and then to create a character like John who suffered. There was a whole lot of. I enjoyed putting them through a lot of bad things.
I think part of what also ended up making Proxima Centauri a lot longer than Alpha Centauri. Proxima Centauri isn't a massive book. We're talking about how it's like not like War and Peace or anything like that. It's about the same length as Alyssa's Flame or Destiny Lost, or it's actually shorter than Building Victoria. But it has a lot of moving parts that are all very closely linked. Like, for example, like in a lot of the Orion War books, there's a lot of moving parts, but they're very disparate. Like there's people over here in this star system fighting this fight, there's people over in this star system fighting this fight. And every now and then they meet the Intrepid and they swap stories and they go back out and do their thing. But with Proxima Centauri, it was all like everybody was interlocked, and it was like, okay, who knew what at what point? Because there was slow bits of revelation happening with the characters. And as Lisa and I went through it, we're like, okay, crap. Well, he didn't actually know that at that point, but he knew that, and they didn't know that. And if they knew that, then he'd know that. Then they would find out, and that wouldn't work. Like we had conversations that were basically that over and over. We're like, we have to stop using the pronouns. Neither of us know what we're talking about anymore.
Well, it's hard not to say say things that are spoilery.
Yeah.
You know, but a big thing that happened was that we took a character, and instead of the character hiding in plain sight, the character ended up not hiding in plain sight, and that had been woven throughout the back half of the book in so many different tiny little threads. I mean, it was like nanofilaments that I had to go back and excise throughout the whole thing.
There was a point in this where Lisa started to hate me.
No, I just went, I don't think it can be I don't think it can be done.
Yeah, because she did it.
I had a slight meltdown one night.
This point here, we gotta change these. Lisa's like, I give up.
So I had the document, we were all looking at, so everyone knows, we were all kind of looking at this document at the same time. And so I was doing my best to read through as well, but I was behind Michael and Lisa. But continuously, like I'm at work and I just keep seeing the notification pop up. Lisa Richmond is Proxima Centauri. Lisa Richmond is editing Proxima Centauri. Like, man, Lisa is putting some work into this.
Yeah, that was all those nanofilaments that I had to go back in and scrub out.
Also, hi, 112,000 words. Just saying.
Right.
It was a bit for Jen to get through as well.
A little bit.
And as we all know, Jen had a lot of fun things to say.
Yep. Yeah, if you haven't found that thread in the Facebook group, we're going to try and keep it going. It's going to be Jen and probably some of T's comments as well as they go through the books, because some of them are real gems.
Yeah.
Fun. Got to make my job fun,
Yeah.
Well, it's great for us authors too, because most of the time, especially for me, because like at least with Andrew, I still called you Andrew, with James and Lisa, I see the book, we work on it together. But with my books, the first person that sees it is Jen. So I'm always kind of like, I wonder if this book sucks or not. So I'm always like eager for Jen's feedback. I think everybody is though, because Jen is the first person who wasn't involved writing the book that sees it.
Yeah.
I always try to tell you that nothing you could write sucks. I always tell you it's going to be fine.
And fine is a 4-letter word.
More than fine.
Fine is a 4-letter word that women use that means the exact opposite of it's. Like if you ever say to your wife, "How are you?" and your wife says, "I'm fine," you run for cover.
You're in trouble.
That's about tone, though. Like you have to read between.
No, we're conditioned. Fine is not a good word. There's no way you can deliver that word in a good tone anymore from me.
No,
Fine.
Fine.
there's a tone.
Fine.
Y'all don't know there's a tone.
Fine.
And we keep it on the down low. There's a tone, but if you guys want to come scared all the time, that's okay. We get out of it, so.
Well, I think there's a good bit of trust there too, where Jen isn't worried that she can't give feedback. That I'm going to speak for Jen now, but it really seems that you are comfortable giving feedback, like, "Hey, this is not working," or "Hey, we need to fix this." And I mean, I was like, "Oh man, now with this thread, Jen's going to be worried like she'll say something that'll end up in the like the best stuff thread or something." But I mean, that's the hard. That's the hard thing with editing.
I never write anything that I don't think eyes are going to see, I know at the very least Cooper is going to see them. And I figure if I was going to say something really off-putting, I would have done it really early on in my editing relationship with you guys when none of you knew me. We were still establishing our connection. Like if I was going to drive you away, I feel like it would have happened already, not like a year and a half in.
This is true.
Well, and we like the honesty too. We like the honesty. None of us have thin skins, so we get it. And it's all for the purpose of making a better thing for people to read.
I also like to believe that I'm blunt, but I'm not mean. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, you're not.
So.
I don't know what else we can say about Proxima Centauri without giving away everything.
There are a lot of Easter eggs in there. A lot of the titles, chapter titles, are actually on homage to female SF writers. So if you see an interesting chapter title, go Google the book. And you might find, And this is another Easter egg. You see that? You see that?
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a clothespin. How's that an Easter egg?
That's an Easter egg. Someone asked me what the C-47 habitat, how it was named. And yes, there's an aircraft named this that's called the C-47, but this is also called a C-47.
Really?
Uh-huh. It's these are used a lot in film. We clip gels and what we call scuzz, things to soften a light. We use that to clip it onto the barn doors of the light. And ages ago, someone tried to claim this, a bag of paper of clothespins on their tax form. And the IRS went, no, those are clothespins. That doesn't work. So he put them in as a piece of equipment called a C-47. So from that point on, and that was back in, I think, the 1940s. So from that point on, we use C-47s at work.
That's a cool story.
So that's where the habitat got its name.
That's really cool. I like that. That's actually exceptionally cool.
Mm.
No, I know, because I've been wondering too. You was like, it's an Easter egg, and I'm like, I've got no freaking Lisa. I don't know. I'm gonna rename it if you don't tell me.
And that would be why. Yeah. I've had an entire trail of these on the back of my shirt. They'd come up and they'd start clipping them, and then they'd clip the next one to the last one, and yeah. The things that happen to Lisa on a shoot.
Better than a post-it that says "kick me," I guess. Yeah.
There's a fun Easter egg on there's a lot of Easter eggs, but one of them is even on the map for Alpha Centauri, because one of the planets is named Farscape.
Yes.
And Lisa works for Hallmark, and Hallmark produced Farscape.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So that was a neat little thing in there as well. I didn't think of that when I first did it, so it's sort of a retconned Easter egg, but I thought it was a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm thinking that I just need to go back and Google all the chapter.
Yeah. The Quantum Rose, The Death of Sleep.
The Death of Sleep is one of my favorite books of all time. So
yeah, Veiled Web, Quantum Rose. I think those are Catherine Asaro books. I've got a Tanya Huff book in there. I've got Anne McCaffrey. I've got Anna Guire.
Mercedes Lackey wrote
Yes.
Death of Sleep, right? No.
No.
No, it was.
That was Anne McCaffrey.
Well, Anne McCaffrey was a co-author, but it was actually one of her editors.
Jody Lynn Nye.
Jody Lynn Nye, who was actually one of her editors, wrote that book.
Mm-hmm.
Because is it Bain who did that one? Jody Lynn Nye is one of the main editors of Bain. Her husband actually started the company. If I'm remembering that correctly, one of those. If Diane.
And who wrote Vorkorsiga?
Lois McMaster Bejeweled.
Yeah, I think there's one of hers in there too. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
There it is.
These are actually authors I have not read, so I gotta check this out.
Yeah.
McCaffrey, but I haven't read this Death of Sleep book.
Well, Anne McCaffrey wrote a book like in the 70s called Dinosaur Planet. Then she wrote another book called Sassenach, which is about Sassenach. Yes, that was Elizabeth Moon. Elizabeth Moon was a Marine, so Anne McCaffrey got with her and they wrote Sassenach. And Sassenach is like a Honor Harrington, Tanis type of character.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of a little bit similar. Elizabeth Moon has a very Tanis-like series as well. With I think the first book's called High Hunt. It's a Marine character, and it's actually a lot like a Tanis Honor Harrington kind of book too. But yes, she wrote Dinosaur Planet Survivors. Then she wrote Sassenach. I think then she wrote The Death of Sleep. Then they wrote Dinosaur Planet, Sassenach, Death of Sleep, Dinosaur Planet Survivors, then Generation Warriors. And they're all written, except for
Generation Warriors is another title.
That's her last chapter in the book. Except for Dinosaur Planet Survivors, they all can sort of be read independently, but you can actually put them all together into this one series that follows these three women across three generations. Well, actually, lots of generations, but there's three of them sort of they're focused on. It's a really cool story, I think. Actually, I think it's one of the quintessential SF stories out there.
Yeah.
The fact that Anne McCaffrey has the best aliens. The Feck, I think, are one of the coolest aliens ever devised. If you haven't read The Feck, or read these books, you won't know what the Feck is, but it's a silicon-based life form, and they form what are called Feck cathedrals to think. And when a Feck cathedral is built, like everybody sort of just sits back for a year or so while the Feck thinks something through. Which I was just like, no one ever does stuff like that in SF. And then she's got the bird race, and the bird race is just nuts. And they're always like going off the handle and everything like that. they're pretty cool. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
and
And Catherine Asaro she's a physicist and a dancer. I think she works for MIT, and she wrote the whole the Veiled Web series, the Quantum Rose. What
I haven't
was
read
it
those,
about?
but maybe like a decade when I have time.
Yeah. And Anna Guire wrote Killbox and Double Blind, and so the Anna Guire and Catherine Asaro are kind of similar. So if you like one, you probably like the other. So anyway.
All right. Should we go to our main topic then, James?
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to say about the book, or anything else?
I hope you like it. If you like it, let us know.
Before we leave Proxima.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that long. I don't think it's that long. We keep saying it's long, but it's not. It's a quick read. So
It goes by.
don't let that be the takeaway.
Yeah.
I
Go ahead.
I wanted to sort of just for folks that are wondering what these books are about, because right now there's nothing that really leads into these books, other than the fact that if you know who Jason Andrews is, you might want to learn his backstory, because Jason Andrews was the first captain of the Intrepid. But these stories, provided that Lisa, wants to, and I think she does, these stories are going to go all the way up to Outsystem. So we're gonna start from when Jason Andrews is a young man meets Terrence Enfield, and eventually to when they say, you know what, let's build this freaking colony ship and get the heck out of here. So it's gonna follow these guys for 1,000 years.
And how the Intrepid actually came to be.
Yeah.
Which is going to be kind of a cool story.
Yeah, why they made it and all that jazz.
Yeah.
And there's some hints about that too in the Precipice of Darkness book that comes out this Thursday, because Jason starts telling us some stories in a bar. And some of them are stories about things that are already written, and some of them are stories about things that aren't written. And those ones are sort of lightly hinted. It's like, yeah, I was back at Alpha Centauri. My buddy Terrence reaches out and says, hey, you want to captain the starship? Why? There's one thing I had to do, but sure.
Yeah, and that one thing you had to do is going to be a book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a ton of fun. It's almost a giddy feeling when you see something in one book referenced in another. It's a whole lot of fun, at least for me as an author. So
I remember as a reader liking that sort of thing too.
Yeah.
Like the fact that in Anne McCaffrey, the exploration and evaluation corps that are mentioned in the Kilashandra books is the same people that found Pern.
Yeah.
So if you look through all of Anne McCaffrey's books, there's all these little Easter eggs here and there that make you realize everything Anne McCaffrey wrote was one universe. Except for the Rowan, but everything she wrote, her ship books, Pern, Kilashandra, the Crystal Singer books, all that stuff was actually one universe. And even the Dinosaur Planet and Generation Warrior stuff with the fact, that's actually all part of the same universe too. So
I have to go back. I mean, I read Anne McCaffrey when I was in high school, so I just wasn't picking up a lot of this stuff. I need to go look at it again as an older reader.
Yeah. I've picked up some Audible of McCaffrey, and it's kind of fun to listen to it as I drive. Yeah. It's I would say the one last thing I'd say about Proxima is probably that it's very, like Michael said, we've kind of really interleaved it. It's very, very tightly woven, and one thing depends upon the other. And I hope we've left you with something that is very, very fast paced, and that is enjoyable. And if you like it, put a review up.
Yeah, write some reviews.
Let us know.
Let us know. Come to the Facebook group. Cool. Well, we were going to talk about bad guys today, or bad people, I should say. And I think the first question was, what are some of your favorite, as authors and readers and editors, what are some of your favorite bad guys? Who wants to go first? Does anybody have an idea?
I'll go first.
Okay.
There's a baddie in a Margaret Atwood book. I think it's Robber Bride. There is a woman named Z, and she's just awful. These are just humans, humans being humans, but she just encompasses so many nasty traits. And she just no one around her is allowed to be happy. She will do what she can to destroy other people's happiness. And like, I remember reading this book and she would start showing up in my nightmares.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And like, she just stuck with me. And like, she's still, I mean, I haven't read this book in years and years and years. It's been, I mean, probably about a decade since I've read this book. And I still think about her because there are people out there like her. And I know that. And so I just, like, she was really effective because she was real. You know, it wasn't like aliens coming to take over. It's like, no, there are people in your life that are going to undermine you and cut you down and try to take what makes you happy just because they can. And that's terrifying for me anyway. And so, yeah.
So would you rather have an antagonist that is just like purely evil, or someone that is understandable like that? Like, or is that more evil to you because you can understand it?
It's almost more evil, because then I start like questioning things about myself. Well, if I can understand this character, does that mean that I am like sympathetic to this character, or I can see the way that they're thinking and I can see how they've gotten to where they are, which actually Prime does also. Prime is one of my favorite baddies now also. But seeing that path and how they got there and knowing that they're not inherently evil, and because I mean, it was a flaw in her, like she didn't know how to be happy herself, right? That's a flaw. So wanting to take that from other people. And then Prime, we see how he becomes bad. Like we see it, we watch it happening, and you're right there with him, and you understand where he's coming from, and then you see the things that he's capable of in No Man.
I think the neat thing about that too is that with Prime and with most bad guys, it's once you understand them, you realize, wow, a lot of what happened to them was circumstance out of their control. It's either biological or it's environmental. Now, they still made the wrong choices at certain points, because lots of people go through the same things and don't become terrible villains.
Yeah.
I'll say, like, you have like sort of the thing, like, well, but there for the grace of God go I kind of scenario. That could be me if I was in that situation. You know, those things that happen to be, I might have made the wrong call at the wrong time.
I have that capability within me.
Yeah, exactly.
No. And that's, in fact, that very Ethan, well, okay, never mind.
Yeah, careful.
Yeah, sorry.
Screen.
Well, I think we live in a world now where there's so much, you have information about people that do bad things that we're kind of fascinated by, but even on like conflict, like it's really difficult to look at, like, see, even the Vietnam War now without, you get both sides of it. I mean, I can't remember what documentary it is that I watched, but it basically had like, now in their 60s, but like an American leader and a Viet Cong leader on either side of the documentary, like talking about the same battle, trying to kill each other, and you end up empathizing with both. And that wasn't the kind of world we operated in even 50 years ago, where it was really easy to other people, and like, that's the bad, those people are bad, they're villains, we need to go kill them. And I think that's now the expectation is that an antagonist is not just flat evil. There should be some explanation of why that exists. Do you think it affects the enjoyment of the bad? Like, is it harder just to buy into, like, because I think I'm thinking of, there are definitely just some bad people in Aeon 14 that just do things because they're bad, but maybe we don't get their stories, fully. So, I don't know. What do you think about that?
Who are you asking?
I don't know. I'm asking everybody. See, I'm looking at all the pictures at once here. So
all the people.
So what question you're asking, if seeing where they're coming from or
makes them more effective, or is it less? Is it more enjoyable to have somebody that you don't understand where they're coming from completely?
I think it depends upon what your goal is as a reader, because there are some books that are, I kind of classify them as mind candy, where you and sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you just want to chill out and have something that's real easy, that you don't have to think about too hard as you're reading, and those are the Teflon characters. Those are the ones where the bad people are are uber bad, and they don't have a good side, and the good people, nothing sticks to them because no harm can come to them, and those are the ones that don't have depth. They're not multifaceted. You won't see maybe the reasoning behind why they became so bad. So that's one. It's almost like a subgenre. It's like science fiction light, or something. But for me, I like the characters that are the ones that have the depth. I mean, I look at any of the like. I think Anne McCaffrey's done it. I know David Weber did it. I think back to some of the whole the whole concept of the Manticoran Alliance and Haven in David Weber's universe, where Haven is they're the big bad there, but they're all you get into the minds of those people and you understand they're not bad. They're just on the opposite side of the conflict. And there are some really, really, truly awful people there, like Cordelia Ransom, and in one of the books, and she was like really, really nasty woman. But you also kind of got the backstory of why she became who she was and how it was kind of rooted in fear. So to me, that's fascinating. To me, knowing any character's backstory is super, super. It just fleshes out the story more.
I think so too. I think world building has a lot to do with it as well. I was just thinking about the fact that you could have a society that has created a person that is bad, because that's how society use things. Like, they're very hierarchical. They use violence to reinforce norms. All those things that lead somebody to react violently against someone else because that's what I was taught to do. I'm perfectly justified in what I'm doing. But another society doesn't see that the same way, So that's one of the weird things about, humans being human, I guess, is that, one side, I think that's fine.
And the quintessential example of what you're talking about too, James, is Nazi Germany. I mean, the Germans are not inherently worse people than anyone else out there, but the regime and the situation and whatnot allowed certain bad people to become, like you're describing, Lisa, for the Haven. They weren't all bad, but badness grew once the situation was right, and once no one stopped certain people from behaving the way that they wanted to behave. And that sort of thing does happen, And to be honest, I think like almost no fiction is as bad as reality either.
Right.
Well,
yeah.
And the scary thing about that is that you kind of wonder how that many people started to convince themselves that the stuff that they were doing wasn't bad. So it's kind of like when I was a child and I first learned about World War II and Hitler and the Holocaust and all that kind of stuff, I literally had nightmares, because to me it was like that really happened in real life, and there's a giant population of people that could be convinced in some way that that kind of act that inherently is bad, murder, not good, and the way they did it into an entire populace, that there must have been some sort of hatred built in, like something like that is scary to me.
Well, it starts, there is theses on this, there's books, this took years, this culminated over years.
Yeah.
And it started small. This started really small, planted seeds, and it just...
I read a great book called They Thought They Were, which is by I think he was a history professor actually, but he lived.
Called? Sorry, we lost part of it.
They Thought They Were Free, and it was written in I want to say 47 or 48. Like, so this professor gets a scholarship to go live in Germany for right after the war, but he spends like a good 4 years just hanging out with actual party men, like low level people that had been in the party, but talks about the fact just the way the whole society was set up through hierarchies, through, from the family unit up, to reinforce that you do what you're told. And then when people were hungry enough, and like the only way you're going to get a job is to go join the party, and then all of a sudden the party starts, not all of a sudden, but over time, the party starts doing things you don't agree with, or your neighbor disappears, but your family is okay, or the way that they othered people. Like, you're right, it's all cumulative over time.
Yeah.
But then they still, that was the thing, like even at the time, like I want to say it was later. It was probably 51 or 52. But they still thought that, like, well, it would have been okay. You know, if we hadn't lost, it would have been all right. And that was the thing that, like, they still didn't necessarily buy, because also information flow. I think information is really important when it comes to antagonists. Like, what information are they getting? What do they even know about something? What reinforces, like, is that information I'm getting, like, making it hard for me to believe in myself? You know, because everybody wants to justify themselves to themselves, right? And so that's another thing to think about. Like, I think a person reaches a point where I did this thing, and I did it
Oh,
for
We're
a
losing
reason.
you. James, we're losing you.
Oh, you all right? Am I there again?
Yeah,
You're back
now you're
now.
back.
You were gone.
Okay.
10 seconds.
But if I tell my, you know, if I accept that the thing I did was evil, then I'm evil, and I'm not going to do that, right?
sorry.
And so,
I think most people we would think of as bad, they don't think of themselves as bad at all.
right.
So I think it's really nice to see that in a baddie in the book, that you can see their motivation, and you can see that makes them really realistic. When I was trying to think of my favourite baddie, I immediately thought of Kathy Bates in Misery.
Yeah.
Because if you look at things from her perspective, what she's doing is through adoration and love. And she would say that, you know, she's kind of driven to that by her noble emotions. So, and I was reading as well that Al Capone once said that he didn't understand why everyone was out after him, because all he was trying to do was let everybody have a good time. So why did everyone hate him so much? You know. So I
I've been the
think
murder.
that's the real
Yeah.
essence.
There's that
That's
little
really,
thing there.
Situational ethics.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
really effective. A very effective baddie is the one where you're reading it and you can actually see their point of view and
Their
or you
self-talk.
can have sympathy for them. Yeah, you can have in some kind of twisted way. You have a little bit of sympathy for them. Yeah.
The part of what you were getting at, James, was the there's three ways that governments and societies value life. One of them is the individual trumps, and that's Western civilization. Our society in America and Canada especially, the individual is paramount. And then you have the family unit is paramount, is the next level up, or the clan level, which is like, you see a lot more in Western Europe, like in Italians, I think, are one of the biggest groups where the family always trumps the individual.
Mafia.
Yeah, the mafia. It's always about the family. Family is number one.
Yeah.
Government is not. Individual is not. And then you find a place like China, for example. China, the government trumps. You are loyal to the state before the family or yourself. And that's why actually everybody's always kind of scared of China, because they're like, that's a lot like what the Germans were doing before the Germans went off the rails. Now China hasn't done that for a variety of reasons, but it's a philosophy that does have geographical ties, and then when you write a villain and we make his own bad, you tie into that. So that's your main reasons why they're going to be bad. They're either bad because they're mafia and they're trying to like support the family against all these other groups. They're bad because the individual trumps, or they're bad because the state has given them the power to do things on behalf of the state. You know, and you'll see that in Aeon 14. You'll see the different groups that actually have those different philosophies. I never really try and say it too loudly, but obviously, like Orion is obviously a place where the state trumps. You know, the state says what's good and what's bad, and everybody toes the line for the state. And if you don't, you're done. You know, Tanis actually operates the clan side of things. Tanis is all about, I'll do whatever it takes to protect the clan. What'd you say, Allison?
I said Stavros comes to mind when you talk about that.
Yeah,
Like,
Stavros was
his own, you know, I don't know, government, and if you didn't like it, you were just out.
Yeah, that was that.
Mind control and all kinds of horrible things he did.
Yeah, he was sometimes I was thinking, like, have I written really bad guys? And I always forget, I wrote Stavros.
Out of the
Well,
bad
and Muirden.
he's the one that I detest the most.
Yeah.
One, because obviously he's not a humane person, but secondly, because of the way he treats his own family.
Yeah.
Like I can't, like, I
Yeah.
just, like, there's a part with Amy trying to get the hair or something like that, and he just smacks her, and I was just like,
There's actually a
Oh.
part of that story that never made it never made it out, because I realized that Stavros was too bad for people to actually read. Some of the things it's alluded to. In fact, Amy at one point says, "This is a man that raped women in front of me," but you never actually saw that in the story. Because I didn't want to write it. I wrote a little bit like, I don't want to write this. I'm just going to allude to it and move on. But and of course, like the stuff that Katrina went through, where Katrina actually became the villain in the end, and then had to become redeemed, and then never fully got redeemed actually for a long time. But the thing that I always think about when I'm writing a baddie, actually, the other kind of baddie I really like is Sauron. And that's and actually, this interesting thing is that Sauron in Lord of the Rings never appears in the books. Never there. You never actually encounter Sauron. And that's actually a way of writing a story where the bad guy just simply isn't in the book. You see his forces and his influences and whatnot, but a lot of the Orion War books are a lot like that, actually. It's fighting against minions or fighting against the environment, but you don't actually fight against the bad guy. But C.S. Lewis wrote in, I think it was in Mere Christianity, he said, the mistake a lot of people make when they're thinking about good and evil is that they think that evil is the opposite of good. They think that the devil is the opposite of God, for example. But that's not possible. That's actually completely impossible, because good is intelligence, breathing would be a good thing, cogent thought, the ability to execute a plan, the ability to gain followers and gain trust. Those are all good things. And so someone who is truly evil, to do well at being evil, has to be very good at those good things as well. So evil is actually not remotely close to the opposite of good. It's just a twist.
So what is a leader?
Twisted facsimile?
Be good as of evil. I don't know.
Have you ever gone to a seminar where they'll start with, what is a leader? What makes a leader? A leader is anyone people follow. So they could be a cult leader, they could be terrible, they could be, you're right, all those positive qualities. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to lead you anyplace good.
Yeah.
However we're defining good.
Yeah.
But I think
bad people can be charismatic.
Yeah.
The good ones, the good
bad people are very charismatic.
Usually are. They're the most dangerous ones, which of course makes them the best villains.
I think for me, I'm gonna go with the Game of Thrones, just because I do think Martin has done so many bad characters and when I think about, like, Roose Bolton is the first one that comes to mind, because I love the fact that he's totally about protecting. He does it in a sociopathic way, but then his son Ramsay comes along and he basically has to pay the price for all the evil things that he's done, where his son is more evil than he is. But then also Tyrion Lannister, or not Tyrion, but Tywin Lannister, all the things that he does to protect his house. But you could also argue they're all just part of that medieval, English system that brutal you will not survive. And so they have, like, a justification to themselves. But I also think there's one thing I wanted to say was, I think when it comes to being, like, say, a leader, like Trooper in the Empire, like, I still have opportunities at that ground level to do the right thing, even if I'm part. I think it just happens. Am I back now?
Yeah, you're back now. Yeah, we lost everything after.
We lost.
I think you were talking about Darth Vader. I'm not sure.
I know you were talking about Star Wars.
Okay. Well,
that's all I got.
So if I'm a I know it's dangerous if we bring up Star Wars. But if I'm a stormtrooper operating at that ground level, right? I have the opportunity to do the right thing, even if my orders dictate me to go take this village, right? But that doesn't mean I have to be brutal about it. I choose brutality. I choose to be cruel.
Right.
Those kind of important distinctions sometimes when it comes to villains.
Yeah.
That's a choice they make, maybe based on something they learned, but they still choose to hit someone when they didn't have to, or and I think that's always an important distinction there, maybe between someone who's operating in a corrupt system versus someone who is truly, I just want to impose my will on others and be cruel to others.
That's a pivotal point in Prime's development, where he realizes, hey, you know what? This is wrong, but I like it. I'm enjoying myself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have one, Jenny? I don't think you've had your favorite villain.
Yeah. like I said, I like the villains that I like. You know, I kind of like the villains that I feel that bring out my maternal instinct. That I can see that they have good somewhere in them, and I want to.
Redeemable.
Yeah. I like those kinds. I don't like the. I actually, when you said Sauron, I thought, no, I really don't like Sauron at all. But then I haven't read the Silmarillion, and I have a feeling that if I read the Silmarillion and I found out his backstory, then I would be able to see something maybe from his perspective, from what he does.
I don't know
I
if you
think
get too much.
because to me they're not so engaging because they don't have a humanity. I think humans are a mixture of good and evil.
Yeah.
And if there's no good, if there's no redeemability in them, then they're not so engaging for me because they're not so human.
That's why Tolkien gave us Wormtongue and Saruman and Denethor and stuff like that. He gave us these human characters that for the most part we could actually understand. Although Saruman never made sense. I guess you could argue he got corrupted by the Palantir. But.
Yeah.
And you got Elrond, who's kind of a dickhead. You know, he's like a good guy, and you're like, wow, this guy's like almost on the other team. Just because he doesn't give a crap anymore.
He's
like,
elven. They want their own things. They don't want human things.
Well, if you ever read the story about Lord of the Rings, the elves basically have been taking forever to leave. Like that's been like they were created, and then the I forget their name now. The angels basically say you can now leave Middle Earth. They're like, okay, cool, we're on it. And then like 7,000 years later, they're still there. They're like, yeah, we're walking. It's taking some fun. We built a couple of cities, you know. We had wars. We moved back a little bit because we thought it was cool over there. It's like, but no, you guys just go.
Time does not mean the same.
Yeah, obviously that's the case. Yeah, which is kind of a cool concept. Actually, you could have a group of people that just spend 10,000 years walking across the continent. Why not? Fun.
So bringing up Sauron and actually the human characters there, I think are useful because if we talk about balance, your villains with your protagonists, and is it important that the villain be seem to be unassailable, or we're talking about kind of human villains? So, should your protagonist be stronger than them equally? How do you balance those things?
Well, they have to have.
Anybody?
They have to have absolute limits. I mean, they have to be realistic. I mean, one of the things that we had to do with Prime was to make sure that whatever he was able to do, it was believable. Mm-hmm. That his capabilities came to him in a realistic way. And you can't just create a bad guy who is all powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was going to say something ridiculous, but it kind of made sense. It tied in, but it was kind of.
Okay. Always say it if it's ridiculous. Just
go
there.
Hey, go for the crazy.
No, I'll say it. Okay, so this is totally not as deep as y'all's bad guys here. But one of my favorite bad guys when I was a kid was Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty.
Uh-huh.
And when I got older, I was like, you know why she's so evil? It's because she cursed a kid and a whole kingdom and all that kind of stuff because she didn't get invited to a freaking party. How pissed off is she? And so that's why I thought she was so bad, because she just didn't get invited to a party. She's got no other reason to be bad. She's just bad. And so when I got older and they made the movie with Angelina Jolie and stuff like that, then I got to actually like her more. And I know it was a movie, it wasn't a book, but it started to explain, and I feel that way. So when you explain something behind why she was so pissed off she didn't get invited to this party, they become better villains. And I know it was kind of ridiculous right there because I'm talking about.
No, it wasn't ridiculous.
I don't think it's ridiculous. Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. And
she's the worst because honestly, she would go to that extremes just because she wasn't invited to a party.
Well, if you talk, she was rejected, right, at some key moment in her life, and she's got to act that out the rest of her life until she
Yeah.
fixes that problem for herself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just, you know, when you first watch that as a kid, you're just kind of like, she's just bad. Just mean.
Well, part of it too, I mean, from a storytelling perspective too, is that kids don't actually understand shades of gray in good and
Right.
evil until they're like, what, 8 or 9 years old or something like that.
Mhm.
And honestly, you don't even fully get it until you're like 18 or 19. Your brain doesn't actually fully progress to the point where you really understand that there's really no good and bad. There's just a lot of gray.
Yeah. There's a bully, and then it was just a bully. They're just mean kids. And now it's all, who hurt you? You
Yeah.
know? It's
Mhm.
it changes, and yeah, my daughter's about 9, and she's starting to see that stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Yeah, and I don't want to be totally,
We can go back now.
I mean, to make everything relative, like there certainly are people, there are laws and that harm others, and we don't want to break them to hurt people. But how do you? I think because people justify it in their mind, but they still do terrible things. Like sometimes I think it gets back to just a person is broken in some way,
Mm-hmm.
don't understand that they're hurting other people, or they don't care. Like sociopaths kind of scare me more than anything because that indicates some kind of like just broken thing in the mind that I empathize and care about other people.
Yeah. Well,
And that's-
sociopathy is literally the opposite of empathy.
Yeah, and that's what kind of scares me the most. Because if you can't care about other people, then
Mhm.
everything falls apart.
Yeah.
It
And
kinda
sociopath.
on.
What was that, Allison?
I said it kind of draws the line between human and not, because one of the things we talk about being humane has a lot to do with empathizing with other humans.
Yes.
And when you can't,
Yeah, are you really part of the same group?
yeah.
Right.
Sociopaths actually are typically the hardest to spot too because they don't actually understand human emotion. They don't understand why. Well, they don't understand people outside themselves. They're like the ultimate narcissists. They're like, everything is just me and nothing else matters. But they're very good at aping human behavior because they don't understand it themselves. So they watch it all the time, understanding how to react the right way in certain situations. So they actually look like the most even keel people on the surface because they're capable of mimicking perfectly normal behavior the best. They study it all the time so that they can do it because they learn when they're younger. Either A, you learn how to do that, or B, they end up in the insane asylum because they're like constantly murdering cats and stuff like that.
Well, I read a great book called The Sociopath Next Door, and that was one of the there's some neuroscientists that had figured out an MRI scan that helps indicate sociopaths, and so he was just studying all these various MRI scans that people had donated, and then he also he had added his own brain scan, like he anonymized the information, and then figured out that his own brain scan showed that he was had a 90% chance of being a sociopath, and it freaked him.
I saw that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it freaked him out, but it also it's more complicated than we think it is because there are people that have this be a sociopath, but they still learn to either overcome it or where at some point they decide to be nice to people. Even if they don't understand why, they choose to be nice.
I think the reason why we operate the way we do is because it's been successful. Family unit, civilization, all these things are the successful things. The unsuccessful things, disappeared because they were unsuccessful. And so sociopaths, a lot of them are smart enough to recognize the fact that civilization is good, and that ethical behavior is good for them too. And that's actually where law comes into play. Sociopaths recognize that if I go and kill people, I go to jail, and I don't want to go to jail, which is very much the same logic everybody else actually has. Theirs is just a little more pronounced.
Maybe I like jail. Maybe jail's fun.
Some people try that out. They do like it. They seem to go back a lot. I don't know.
I know. I don't have to worry about my life. Jail gives me all the things I want.
Yeah, there you go.
Structure.
Oh, go ahead, Jenny.
The funny thing about that story, James, was I don't know if you read the second part to it, was that he went home to his wife and told her what he'd found. And she said, yeah, I can really see that. And she really knew that he kind of didn't have empathy.
Yeah.
But I think he was saying that it was, because we always think of sociopaths as people they're serial killers, they're evil CEOs, they're all terrible people. But you actually need something else like an abusive childhood or a very traumatic event or something as well to actually turn people into really evil.
Yeah.
Into, making very evil in their actions.
Mm-hmm.
So we have sociopaths among us,
that are
somebody
highly functioning.
could be a sociopath. We just don't know.
Yeah.
Allison, we lost what you were saying.
Oh, I sorry. Isn't Sherlock Holmes supposed to be a sociopath?
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
is.
I think so.
People without
He's
empathy.
kind of been retconned as like a high functioning, like he might be autistic
I
or might have
think
been.
sociopath.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think, one thing I was just thinking about with any villain story is that, like, quite often I think one of the tropes is the turn, like, there's a crisis that happens and the villain chooses to be bad.
Mhm.
And it's important for the reader to see that because it helps them understand why. Like, even though they don't agree with the choice, they've got two bad, like, what's the best thing you want to do for a character? Give them two bad choices and then, have them choose one. And I was just thinking about various characters, like always that moment, where, what is it in The Lion King where he becomes the bad, I don't know, never mind. But but it seems like that's part of that journey is that they choose.
Yeah.
Mm.
So an interesting little thing that we're talking about, like what's good and evil and what's bad and whatnot. If you think about the human race, and this is actually something that I do address every now and then in the books, what's good for the human race is not necessarily what's good for the individual.
Individuals, yeah.
And like, for example, like a totalitarian regime that was focused only on, renewable energy and colonizing other planets may be the best thing for the human race, but it might involve mass genocide.
I know, it's terrifying.
What's good for the human race is actually almost rarely directly aligned with what's good for the individual. But even beyond that, like if you're like to sort of think like galactically, like what if you're like, you know what? The humans are fine, they're good people and all that, but we're pretty sure that they're going to be a disease that's going to spread everywhere, so we're going to wipe them out. Are those people bad? Are they good? Your morality is, as trite as Obi-Wan Kenobi sounded when he said it, what's right and wrong really does depend on your point of view as much as anything else.
Yeah.
But I'm me. I don't want to die.
Yeah, I mean, and
I don't want you to wipe me out.
But that's, of course, successful organisms have a very strong sense of self-preservation, and humanity has been fairly successful. So we do like to preserve ourselves, which is actually one of the reasons why I think that the future is rosy, why I wrote Aeon 14 the way I did, because I think that humanity's desire for self-preservation will solve a lot of problems for us. And history backs me up on this. Every single time we face something that could be incredibly disastrous, we avert it. Like the Great Famine that was going to happen in the 1970s. There were a billion people were going to starve, and they figured out how to grow corn and wheat everywhere, and no one starved. We built enough nuclear weapons to turn the globe into just radioactive ashland, and then we didn't use them. We screw up a lot, and the next problem is always the current solution. The current solution always becomes the next problem. Savings and loan, got rid of savings and loan problem, created the housing crisis. And that's really basic, but every single solution becomes the next problem. And people always look at that and they say, wow, we really suck. We're just screwing up all the time. It's like, actually, this is just called progress. It just looks nasty from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
It's all to drive alcohol sales. That's really what it's about.
That's actually not a bad way to look at it. Everything that happens in history is just to sell more booze.
We've evolved, just need more booze.
Yeah.
Well, I think, does anybody else have any notes they wanted to talk about with villains? Is there anything we have not touched on?
I think we've done a pretty good job.
Yeah, I love writing villains, so it's always fun to talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't really write villains that much. That's the funny thing.
You have the caretaker, you have Ersa, you have the mini caretakers, you have Mirrodin, you have Stavros.
Yeah, but Stavros is like one of the villains I actually put on the page. Most of the ones like, yeah, they're over there, they're doing villainy things, don't worry about it,
Yeah. They're around,
They're around. I like writing.
You see the result of the stuff that the bad guys have done.
That's why I actually think writing villains is really hard, because I want to write about people that I admire and people that are good people doing good things. And villains are hard. Like, they're just like, it's stupid. I would never do that. Why would they do that? I don't want to write about them doing that.
Well, one of the
I
things I
love
learned
that
early on
spirit.
in law enforcement is that sometimes you can't think too deeply into why people do things because they just you do, and you have to accept that. But for me, that makes it easier to write. Like, this isn't something I would do, but I get that this is why this person's doing it. You know?
Makes.
Mhm.
What are you gonna say, Jenny?
I like writing villains because I like to try and show why they're doing what they're doing. I think they're really interesting. Whereas good characters, they're just good, you know? They're just, and also good characters, there's not so much room for change either. I think it's interesting to read about characters changing after they go through their experiences.
That's true.
So,
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
like villains. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one
And
too.
I must be sick.
I
Yeah,
like
I'm like looking at Lisa and Jenny here right now, thinking, oh, I love these two. That
I
last one,
like I also like it when the good guys make serious mistakes, you know, because that's something that
It's human.
uh-huh. Yeah,
They're-
and then oh crap, now how are we going to get out of this because we
Yeah.
really blew it.
it's really
Mhm.
hard to do that with Tanner.
But then readers are like, why are these characters so dumb? I'm like, well, because what would you do in that situation? Do you have all the answers? But people don't want to buy that.
Yeah.
Like that's what's made for me. Like for a lot of reasons, I find Tannis is so hard to make. It's so hard to make Tannis screw up. It's like, okay, Tannis is like tippity top selection out of 7 trillion people. You know, she's old, she's wise, she's like 230 years old, she's seen it all, she's done it all. She's not going to be impulsive. She's not going to be impetuous. You know, she's not going to do stupid things. Every now and then I got like, okay, what's the reason why Tannis would do something dumb? You know, I need Tannis to, it's like, I've once or twice, I think I've screamed at my computer, like, Tannis, won't you just screw up for once?
But I think you can work around that. I think if you have characters who perceive what she's doing as wrong because they are not as wise, they don't have the same experience, then you don't have to make it so that she is doing something dumb.
Yeah.
You can like go about how someone else might see it that
Or I
way.
drop her on Pyra and kill everybody around her.
Or that, yeah.
Well, she, you know, she's got her whole, you know, origin stories thing. I mean, at some
Yes.
point, she wasn't born, you know, top.
Amazing.
That's actually one of the reasons why I'm really enjoying writing the origin stories, because I get to write a more vulnerable, less certain, but still fairly cocksure. And Tannis has always been kind of like, I'm top notch. She's always had a very good opinion of her skills.
Mhm.
Not quite able to live up to it as well at this stage of the game.
Very humble.
I think there's something to say too about villains being effective because they're just so overwhelmingly awful. Like the one that comes to mind is Kilgrave in Jessica Jones.
That's, yep.
He is another one that I can't even like, I can't think about him for too long because he's terrifying, but like he's just so overwhelmingly powerful. Like, how do you even counter that? How do you get out from complete and utter mind and body control, you know? And so, and to counter that, to balance that, you have Jessica Jones, who literally has super strength. Like, she has to be super strong physically, but she's like also got an insane amount of problems.
She's a flawed heroine.
Yeah, and trauma, and I mean, she's a raging alcoholic, and she's got trauma. She lost all her family and all of that stuff. But there is a balance there. There is a balance between them. But Jess is a very dark character because there are times where she sometimes comes across as the bad guy. Like, you can't really tell the difference between her and a hero. So she's kind of an anti-hero, like
She's a total anti-hero. Yeah.
Right.
And you almost empathize with Kilgrave because he loves Jessica. In his mind, he loves her.
Yeah,
maybe you almost empathize with Kilgrave.
Well, no, I didn't. But I mean, that's where it's in his mind. That's what he, you know, that story was such a perfect example of like terrible relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that Jessica Jones would be one of the best written characters on television.
Yeah.
She is.
I didn't want to get through this conversation without talking about.
Kilgrave is one of my favorite villains. It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're talking about TV shows and stuff like that, and like the, you know, It's a Marvel, isn't it? Marvel?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is Marvel.
Yes, thank you. I was just making sure I have my universes correct. I'd get butchered for that. Out of the Marvel, because I can understand Thanos, you know, and I can understand something like that, and I can kind of understand, but I could really understand Kilgrave. He is just he thinks what he's doing is for a bigger goal. It's to make her happy. It's to and to make him happy, and it's all going to be fine. But he does the most horrible things to get there, and it's just he is a scary villain because
He has a blind spot is something we hadn't talked about, because he just can't see that what
can't.
he does is taking agency away from someone else, and that you fundamentally love someone if you're going to control them that way, but he can't see that, or at least it doesn't seem that he can see that.
Yeah, and he killed a ton of people on the way, or he makes them kill themselves, which is really
Even worse.
Also terrible. Yeah.
Do you say something, Jenny?
Kilgrave to me was like cursed by his power, because he was never forced to grow up. He always struck me as like a 6-year-old child that had never been forced to face the consequences of anything that he ever did. So I think I really liked that character too, because you could see why he was how he was. Yeah.
Thanos, by the way, is the worst villain of all time. He is the
He is.
dumbest villain ever created. And I get there's licensing reasons, like in the comics, in the Infinity War, his whole goal was not just to kill half of everybody for population control purposes. I guess he actually just worshipped the god of people and was a bad dude. Yeah. But like, I don't know if you understand like how population growth works, buddy, but you're going to be doing this again in a couple of years. If you only kill half the people, it only takes like 2 generations of moderate population growth to pretty much hit that number again. And
he did in the movie of kind of letting you understand where he was coming from, but he killed his own daughter. He's not a great, very deep villain. He's very superficial, but you can still kind of get where he's coming from.
You can, but like I said, with population control and also just understanding resource density in the universe, it's like the universe has got a lot of stuff. You could actually keep going for a long time.
I think that's why in the comics, that's all he does, is he just continues to go around destroying worlds.
Like I think so, yeah, because he just
has his only purpose in life.
Yeah, that's just his job. Someone's got to do it,
Someone's got to do it. Someone's got to.
It's a dirty job.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, he's the Mike Rowe of the future. He's like evil Mike Rowe. Dirty job. Someone's gonna do it. It's gonna be me.
Someone's got to do it.
Sorry, Mike Rowe. You're a good guy. It's not. I should not compare Mike Rowe and Thanos. It's the worst comparison ever made.
Sorry, Mike Rowe, if you're listening to this, that's not what we meant.
But yeah, so that was I just like it just bugged me so much, because I actually put that post up just a couple days ago describing like how every single ship you've ever seen in every single science fiction movie put together could be built with Mercury. Mercury has enough mass in it. Mercury's a giant ball of iron floating in space. With Mercury, you could build everything you've ever seen. It could build 240,000 Death Star 2s. The Death Star 2 is like 150 kilometers across. It could build, it was something like 3.4 billion superstar destroyers. You've never seen that many ships in your entire life. It could all be built with Mercury. There's no resource scarcity in the universe that we need to worry about, Thanos. It's gonna be okay. Your planet screwed up, the whole universe will be fine. That's what bugged us. I guess that's where it comes into like the whole. You can only suspend disbelief so far, and after like no, this one's not working for me anymore.
Didn't say his reasoning wasn't flawed.
But people who might not understand resources in the universe and population growth, they'd be like, "Oh, it's fine. Overpopulation is bad. You just kill half." Of course,
depending on like I was just reading, I think the Bobiverse, Dennis Taylor's series, he really pushes hard on resource scarcity, and that's like part of what's pushing us out of Sol. And every time they go to a new system, they're like, "There's not enough mass here to build anything with." But that's a constraint he's put on the story, and I think depending on where people are coming from or what they've read in the past, that's like an idea they're bringing to, you got to kind of hammer home how much mass there actually is, and why asteroid mining is actually a big deal. And we the idea of building in space is going to be huge for the human race. But you got kind of competing ideas of the future there.
Well, I think some of that, this is way off topic now, but we always have to have some of the segue at the end. Apparently the fans like it. They mentioned they love our funny off-topic segues that we seem to get captured by. But like someone mentioned this once, and I went and researched it, the amount of trash that we generate. Like, you think, oh, we must generate so much trash. Back in the 80s, we were told that if you stacked up all the diapers that were used every year, it would reach the moon, which turns out was a little bit of hyperbole. But as it turns out, like, so you could dig a hole in the United States, just think in Wyoming, where no one will ever find it, 100 kilometers by 100 kilometers, 100 feet deep. You could put all the trash the United States generates for 100 years into that hole. And so I looked it up, and I did the research, and I looked at how much trash actually every person in the United States generates. And actually, as it turned out, that hole was more than large enough. It could have made it for 200 years. So people have it. Yeah,
see, that would be better. We'll just call it a time capsule. It's a project.
It would be a pretty decent time capsule, actually. I mean, obviously, no one would want to live, anywhere near this thing.
No.
And you certainly wouldn't want to have it near any rivers, because everybody downstream would die.
Well, where did they find? Like, I was reading about a Roman. Like, the first instance that we found of a woman's writing was in the equivalent of a land in the UK, where they had where they'd thrown away a letter a woman had written back to someone in Rome, but that was the only way they found it, was in a landfill.
Yeah,
we need more landfills.
But I guess what I was getting at,
I digress.
Humans have an over the way we view the world right now has caused humans to think that we impact things more than we do, and that we consume more resources than we do. We don't, actually. And yes, well, some resources are becoming scarce. If you were to dig enough holes in the crust, you would find everything you need, but no one wants to. Digging giant holes in our planet till the whole thing's gone is a bad idea, which is why asteroid mining is a fantastic thing to do. Stop digging holes in our planet, and let's start doing all this stuff in space, where, the heat goes into space and doesn't stay trapped in our atmosphere. All these other wonderful things, and all the toxins we're not breathing them. There's so many good reasons to be building in space, people. Drives me nuts when people say, let's clean up our planet first. Like, the best way to clean up our planet is take all the shit we do and do it somewhere else. And then people are like, well, you're gonna clean up the solar system. It's like, let's talk about how big the solar system is.
Yeah, no kidding.
Well, this is a segue within my segue. I just have to get this one out. People always talk about, like, space debris, and they're like, oh, we're filling up space with junk. And you see, like, all the things that are being plotted out there in space and whatnot. I'm like, look, if you took, like, 1 foot down of the entire United States and tossed it into space, and then flew around for the rest of your life, you might never hit any of it. Like, space, and that's just if it's orbiting close to Earth. If it's like within like a couple 100 miles of Earth, because space is just freaking huge. But anyway, that's my little rant.
That's because of all those models that you see of the solar system, because they're not accurate in size. Everybody thinks.
Well, yeah, because the solar system is so large, it's impossible to actually draw it on a page and have it be accurate.
Yeah.
Like, if you
can't do it to scale.
Yeah, if you ever, maybe I should put a link to some of them. No one's ever seen them, but those ones where, like, someone, like, puts like a basket, they're like, okay, here's the sun, and they put like a beach ball down, and then they're 15 kilometers away, putting a pinhead on the sidewalk, saying, and now here's Pluto. We finally got there. Like, it's that big. It's just really, really big. Which is, I think, one of these that really tried to push home in Aeon 14 is that it's really, really big. But the other cool thing, it's actually full of stuff.
Perseus, they're going from one end of what they know to the other end. They're just trying to get to, and it's taking them like 20 years.
Oh yeah, Perseus gate, yeah. And they're not even flying all the way across. They're only flying about 2/3 of the way across.
The dark matter and the
Yeah. Poor folks spending years just flying around.
Flying around adventures.
Well, I've been listening to this book about octopus intelligence. And octopuses are amazing, but an octopus can only see 8 feet, whereas humans can see to the horizon. And so you think about our ability to conceptualize certain things, and even how we're limited by what we can see, that it really takes such a leap to imagine the distances involved in space travel, to really internalize that.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if we can only see 8 feet.
Further than the horizon, because we can see the stars.
Oh, you're true. Yeah, you're right.
A really long way.
Yeah, we can actually. Yeah. I think one of the coolest things you can ever do is get a telescope, get like a $120 telescope off Amazon, and start looking at things in space. Because it's so wild to look up at the moon or to look at Saturn. When I first saw Saturn, it blew my mind. Because for me, Saturn had always been the thing on a piece of paper right to the right of Jupiter. And when you look at Saturn, and you can see the rings with a $120 telescope, you can actually see Saturn's rings. And you look at that, and you're like, Saturn isn't a thing on a piece of paper. It's that way. If I was just to be able to go that way for long enough, I would encounter Saturn. And it looks really cool. And you can actually look at Jupiter and you can see the Galilean moons. You see these little points of light in a line right next to Jupiter. And you're like, that's Europa, that's Ganymede, and
Callisto.
Those are real places, and they're just out there.
They're waiting. And they're all moving around you all the time, so don't forget that part.
What was that?
And everything's moving continuously, so don't forget that part.
I also like to think of how old I am as how many
space and go straight line kind of alter a little bit.
Right.
You gotta
be there when you get there.
angle it. You gotta meet it there. But think about like your age is actually your number of trips around the sun, which is pretty wild if you think about it. And then the sun is moving at like 30 kilometers a second through the galaxy. We're not gonna make a trip. I know, right? My hair.
We're gonna insert that GIF there. Where it's just like.
There you go.
Well, I think, have we reached the end of our digression for this episode?
I think we might have.
Keep going.
Well, really, villains are it's a really interesting topic to talk about. So maybe we're gonna have to make this one like an annual thing where we come back.
You keep talking about that, guys.
Yeah.
Have we talked heroes yet?
Not yet, and that would be an interesting thing to touch on maybe next time. Like what makes a great hero.
Yeah.
I have a question for Jen, actually.
Me?
Okay, and it is on topic. It's about bad guys. Yes.
Okay.
No, McDonald. It's how is it to edit a bad guy?
It's kind of isolated because the only person I can yell at for making this bad guy is the author.
I was wondering if
and she yells.
Anybody else about it? I can't I can't be like, what the fuck is happening right now? Like, except for the author, and they can't tell me because I have a strict I don't want spoilers rule.
Oh yeah.
So I'm like, what's going on? And I'm like, don't tell me, but oh my God, what's going on?
That's when she says things like fan-effing-tastic. Oh, great.
Or the one in Precipice of Darkness. What are you doing? Are you trying to start a riot?
I was like, what? Are you seriously doing this right now?
I was so stoked though because it's so hard to make that scenario convincing, and you were buying it, so I'm pretty happy.
Well, I mean, there has to be some. Anyway, okay, we're not going to go there yet.
Moving on. Allison,
I was curious because you're the first person that sees it right after he writes it.
Yep.
And so I'm just kind of like, are you probably going, why would this character, what? Like, I'm curious if that ever happens. If you're like, what are you doing?
What's it like to narrate them, Allison? You have to read it out loud.
Oh, it's fun. That's all. It's just fun. Because I have to, channel my inner drama and be evil for a minute.
Be Ursula, be Maleficent.
Yeah, my
Disney villain.
Stavros was not easy.
No, Stavros. Well, that's because you did the Greek accent too, so you had to deal with that.
And I'm like, anyone who's Greek is probably going to go, that was a butcher. But, it passed for me.
Yeah.
And, no, but he was hard to voice because I didn't want to say some of the things he said. I was just like, ooh. But you do, so I just kind of had to be like, okay, for right now, I'm this terrible person, and I'm just going to be revel in my horribleness, So it's fun because I get to be a different person. But
I do think to myself sometimes when I write certain things like Allison's going to have to read this out loud. And I kind of that's
you usually tell me ahead of time you're going to have to read this later, and I'm like,
I'll send her things like you're going to have to read this. It's going to be terrible. You're gonna laugh your ass off trying to read some of the things that happened to Tannis in this next book. By the way, in the operative book.
Yes, I was reading the bikini part, and I'm going, oh no.
Oh, that part, yeah, where Tannis is saved by her bathing suit in a rather uncomfortable fashion.
Like,
Space wedgie? Like, what's going to happen?
Yeah. Tannis is falling down a shaft. The only thing she's wearing is a bathing suit. Catches on something. Very
Space wedgie.
It's very cartoony.
Are there wedgies in Zero G?
It's like Tannis and Acme meet up. And
yeah.
We have to figure out
this is where
what the gravity is to enable wedgies.
Powers a little bit for a minute or two in the book. Although I make sure it was brutal. Not like brutal physically for her, but the whole event, it was hard. Tanis didn't enjoy anything that happened.
Oh,
Who's mentally brutal?
it was mentally brutal to read some of that. And I'm a woman.
All right, before things
No,
get too awkward, I think we've reached our hour and a half. It's a good place, good image to leave everyone on.
There we go. It's all on an awkward note. Just
I know.
always.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tune in next week.
I know. Tune in next week. I've got my canned thing here. So obviously, we have a lot more we could talk about this subject of space wedgies and awkward situations.
That should be
I think I should note though that if
Just
this
wait.
book, Jen will be the reason why. Like if you like read the book, like there's no atomic wedgie in this book, it's probably because Jen was just like, no.
Nope, not going to work. Bad
Yeah,
idea.
because I'm the no funisher. I'm like, no.
No,
Thumbs
you
down.
really encourage the good stuff too. I shouldn't paint you in that light. Lots of times Jen's like, I want more of this. This is amazing. So
And all of this awkwardness is around Tanis Operative. Tanis Richards Operative. Just so
Operative,
everyone
yeah.
knows when you're watching or listening to the podcast, that's what you
That's
have
the book to look for.
forward to.
Nice.
follow the media. Yeah, that's the
not-
book. That,
book. There's awkwardness in a lot of the books,
That's
especially the Perseus Gate ones. I'm like, oh, okay.
that's true. Some of the things you have to
That
read.
one-
Those
those
books.
are fun to. Those are fun. Because
Just wait. Well, I guess you're not going to be narrating this one, but Chris Ducart's going to have to. There's a couple of things in. There's the glitter chair in
Glitter bombs.
Yeah, glitter bombs. Yeah, because Lisa just kept introducing glitter, and I'm reading her book, and there's the glitter everywhere in her book. So glitter just happened to also show up in the other book I was working on at the same time. Yeah, Lisa has an AI that sheds glitter in body form. So
Okay. Yeah.
Sheds.
There's. You never know what to expect.
Never know what to expect. Glitter bombs transcend history.
Glitter will always transcend history.
Can't get
no,
rid of
actually, glitter is causing serious environmental problems. They need to stop. We need to stop using glitter.
It's because you can't get rid of it.
Oh, come on, you could just dig a hole a foot deep, a foot wide.
Put all the-
Wyoming, you could just put all the glitter in there. You'll be fine.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it.
Problem solved.
But this is glitter. I mean, have you ever tried to clean up glitter? You can't clean up glitter. I have an 8-year-old dog in my house.
Be glitter.
There's glitter everywhere.
Glitter is like
You've
herpes. It just
actually-
never goes away.
We've actually banned glitter from our house. Our 12-year-old does not get glitter anymore.
I have
Is not responsible with it.
I have this gay friend, Chico, and she goes like, once you become a gay man, you're just glitters in your life for forever. It's just the way it is.
The worst glitter story I could ever tell you, or the best, depending upon what you, because we get a lot of glitter. I mean, they're cards, Hallmark cards. They've got a lot of, some of them have glitter on them. And we've got this, like this free thing that kids can go into. It's called Kaleidoscope. And so, you know, it's like all of our scrap stuff goes in there, and it's a kid's creative wonderland. Well, the president, George Bush the second, 44? Yeah, anyway, he came, and it was the one day that I was a member of the White House press corps. We came and visited Hallmark, and he gave a speech, and he had just visited the Kaleidoscope, and he comes in and he's standing there and he's giving some speech on the budget, and I'm looking at him going, you've got glitter, right? It's right. It was right.
That's
Well,
great.
I got something in my nose. What?
Yeah,
What?
it's like,
I can't fit my nose on camera, Lisa.
so even the president
Wouldn't
of
be
the
right.
United States
It wouldn't.
has a glitter problem.
W probably had a glitter problem
That's
anyway.
the best meeting someone famous story I've ever heard.
Yeah.
trying to gesture to the president, I think, to get glitter off their lip. That's amazing.
Yeah.
How does one get glitter on their lip?
Let's
Come on
not
now.
start this conversation.
Yes.
All right, till next.
Let's move on.
Join us in the Facebook group, which is
We'll continue talking about glitter.
I know facebook.com/group/Aeon14fans. We'd love to see you there, and we'll be back with more goodness for you. Until then, we'll see you on the Intrepid. See you, everybody. Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.